So I was out in LA this summer doing an internship for a production company. My job was to read the scripts coming in and condense the information so that my bosses could read through the concepts quickly. So basically, I spent an entire summer reading unproduced scripts from professional writers. Here's what I learned. Number one, there is a difference between shock value and good writing. A lot of the scripts I read focused much more on shocking the reader rather than actually writing a good scene. There seems to be a misconception that if something is shocking, then it automatically becomes good. For example, many screenwriters tend to lean on scenes filled with sexual assault or brutal violence to make the reader cringe or be repulsed. Sure, they were able to create an emotional reaction from the reader, but it doesn't make that a good script. Anyone can write a repulsive scene. A good screenplay comes from an emotionally impactful and cohesive story with well thought out characters. Most of these kinds of scripts were monotonous, rehashed garbage that we've seen 100 times before. There was nothing really interesting or creative in those scripts. Write a good story, not shocking scenes. Number two, if you're going to write a genre film, make sure it has a hook. Let's say you want to write a screenplay about some sort of government special agent. That's fine, you can do that. You just need to understand that this category of film has been absolutely beaten to death. What are you going to give the audience that it hasn't seen 100 times before? You need to have a strong hook, something that can flip the genre completely on its head so that it can be looked at in a completely new way. I read many well-written scripts that failed to be interesting because the core concept had been done multiple times before. A good way to practice genre flipping is to take a core concept within the genre, protagonist, antagonist, setting, etc., and replace it with something that doesn't make any sense at all and force it to make sense. For example, creating an antagonist that doesn't fit at all into this predetermined world and then forcing that antagonist to make sense within the world, and that could change your entire story for the better. Number three, focus on your characters. Characters were weak in the large majority of what I read, so I feel like this is something to examine. Think about your characters a lot, more than just what you're putting into the script. Through doing so, you may be able to find things to add to your story to make it more interesting. There were some scripts I read that had tight storylines and a pretty interesting concept, but were filled with characters that all sounded the same or didn't sound like people at all. Don't fall into the same problem. It doesn't mean that your first draft has to have perfectly vibrant characters, but over time you need to be able to create characters that act and feel like fully fleshed out human beings. A tip for this is specificity over generality. Start from a character archetype and work your way down to specificity to create a more unique character. Number four, if you are writing a story about a writer learning about the reality or rawness of writing, or what it means to be a writer, stop right now. First off, it is cliche and boring and does nothing but stroke your ego. Chances are you've barely written anything and you're just using writing to make yourself seem more interesting than you actually are. Also, writing about writing is innately difficult. Unless you are a brilliant writer, writing about writing will just come off as pretentious. Are you unsure about whether or not you're a great writer? I'll clear it up for you. You're not. You're watching YouTube videos about writing. Number five, your screenplay shouldn't start getting interesting on page 70. I was surprised at how many times I saw this problem. So many professional writers are basically writing 70-page act ones and then jumping right into their climax on page 70. Don't reveal everything about your characters in Act 1. Leave room for fun and hardship in Act 2. Allow us to learn about these characters through conflict. And don't write a story that only has one interesting reveal that bottlenecks you from creating a strong Act 2. What I mean by that is don't be so focused on a twist or reveal so much so that we can't learn anything else about the characters because this is standing in the way and you need that for your climax. Number six, most pro writers are not geniuses. They just did the work. I was surprised that most of what I read was bad. There are too many mediocre scripts getting made into movies. There is serious room for great scripts. So close out of YouTube and go write. I'll see you in the next one.